The most dangerous people often look kind. They smile, they help you, they make you feel understood, and by the time you notice something is wrong, you're already emotionally invested. You trust them, you defend them, you ignore the warning signs because you want to believe they are exactly who they pretend to be. But psychology tells a very different story. People with bad character rarely reveal themselves all at once. Instead, they leave small clues, tiny moments, almost invisible behaviors. The question is, would you recognize them before it's too late? Imagine you've just achieved something you've worked toward for months. A promotion, a personal goal, a dream that finally became reality. You excitedly share the news with someone close to you. They smile. They congratulate you. They say all the right words, but something feels off. The excitement disappears almost instantly. Their smile seems forced. They quickly change the subject, or they remind you why your success isn't really that impressive. At first, you ignore it. After all, everyone has bad days. But this wasn't just a bad day, it was your first warning sign. Psychologists have long observed that our true character is revealed less by what we say and more by how we react to other people's success. Someone with healthy self-esteem can genuinely celebrate another person's achievements. Someone with hidden resentment often can't. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel threatened. Instead of celebrating, they compare. Instead of supporting, they quietly hope you fail. The frightening part is that jealousy rarely announces itself openly. It hides behind sarcasm, backhanded compliments, silence, or subtle attempts to make your accomplishment seem smaller than it really is. And because these reactions are so subtle, most people miss them completely. But this is only the beginning, because envy is often just the first crack in a much darker pattern. The next warning sign is even harder to recognize, because instead of attacking your confidence, it slowly begins to control your mind. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely guilty, even though you couldn't explain why? You replay every word in your mind. Maybe you overreacted. Maybe you were too sensitive. Maybe it really was your fault. At least that's exactly what they wanted you to believe. Real manipulation rarely looks dramatic. It doesn't begin with threats. It begins with small emotional shifts. Imagine you're having a simple disagreement with someone. Instead of discussing the problem, they suddenly remind you of a mistake you made months ago. They change the subject. They question your memory. They tell you, that's not what happened. I never said that. You're imagining things. Little by little, the conversation is no longer about what they did. It's about whether you can even trust your own thoughts. Psychologists call this one of the most dangerous forms of emotional manipulation because it slowly disconnects people from their own judgment. The manipulator doesn't need to control every decision. They only need to make you doubt yourself. Once that happens, they begin making the decisions for you. The frightening part is that many manipulators don't appear cruel. They appear caring, helpful, patient. Sometimes they even say, "I'm only trying to help you." And that's exactly why manipulation is so difficult to recognize. It hides behind kindness, behind concern, behind love. Until one day you realize you've stopped making choices because they feel right, and started making choices simply to avoid another uncomfortable conversation. Healthy relationships create freedom. Manipulative relationships create dependence. One helps you become more confident. The other slowly teaches you to question everything about yourself. But manipulation isn't the deepest warning sign, because there's something even more revealing. Something that almost every person with bad character eventually exposes. The inability to truly care about another human being. Imagine you're sitting across from someone. Your voice is shaking. Your eyes fill with tears. You're telling them about one of the hardest moments of your life. For a brief second, they look concerned. Then they check their phone, change the subject, or somehow manage to make the conversation about themselves. It feels confusing, almost surreal, because in that moment, you realize they heard your words, but they never truly felt your pain. One of the clearest signs of bad character is the inability to genuinely empathize with another human being. Empathy isn't simply saying, "I'm sorry." It's the ability to step into someone else's emotional world. People with healthy character naturally do this. People with poor character often imitate it. They've learned the right words, the right facial expressions, the right reactions, but underneath, there's very little genuine concern. To them, other people's emotions are often just information, something to use or something to ignore. And once someone lacks empathy, another behavior almost always follows: dishonesty. Think about someone you've caught lying more than once. The first lie usually seems harmless. A small excuse, a tiny exaggeration, a story that doesn't quite add up. You give them the benefit of the doubt. Everyone lies sometimes, but over time, the stories become more frequent. Details change, promises disappear, facts become flexible. Until one day, you no longer know which version is true. Psychologists have found that trust isn't destroyed by one big lie. It's destroyed by hundreds of small ones. Because every lie sends the same message: my image matters more than the truth. And once honesty disappears, every relationship slowly begins to collapse. But even that isn't the most dangerous part, because some people don't just refuse to tell the truth, they refuse to take responsibility for anything at all. Imagine apologizing, even though deep inside you know you did nothing wrong, not because you were guilty, but because arguing with them had become exhausting. No matter what happened, they always found someone else to blame: a friend, a partner, a coworker, even bad luck. Anyone except themselves. One of the strongest signs of bad character is the inability to take responsibility, because admitting a mistake requires humility, growth, self-awareness. Without those qualities, people remain trapped inside the same destructive patterns for years. But there's another behavior that's just as revealing. Think about the people who only seem to remember you when they need something: a favor, money, advice, support. While they're benefiting from your kindness, they make you feel important, valued, needed. But the moment they get what they wanted, the messages become shorter. The phone calls disappear. The friendship slowly fades away. Healthy relationships are built on mutual care. Unhealthy relationships are built on convenience. And perhaps the saddest warning sign of all is the need to make other people feel small. Have you ever met someone who constantly hides insults inside jokes? Who points out your weaknesses in front of others, and then laughs when you feel uncomfortable? People like this often appear confident, but psychology tells a different story. Those who constantly put others down are often trying to escape something within themselves. Their criticism isn't really about you. It's about protecting their own fragile ego. Because people with strong character don't need to make others feel weak. They inspire, they encourage, they celebrate growth. People with bad character do the opposite. Eventually, their actions reveal what their words work so hard to hide. That's why true character is never discovered in someone's promises. It's discovered in their patterns, in the small moments, the quiet reactions, the choices they make when they believe nobody is paying attention. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. You can't control who enters your life, but you can choose who earns a permanent place in it. Protect your peace, protect your self-respect, protect your future, because the people you allow into your life will quietly shape the person you become. And sometimes, the smallest warning signs are the ones that save you from the greatest heartbreak.